In this video, I'm going to show you the easiest possible way to get started with calligraphy if you're a beginner. Now, of course, you probably know that calligraphy is a skill that takes a lot of time to learn, and there's lots of tools you can do it with, but I'll just show you using regular paper, regular markers. I'll show you a couple different kinds of markers that you can use. This is just a regular marker that you might have something like this at home, where if you draw it, it's just a regular line. So to do calligraphy, or to turn your letters into calligraphy, all you have to do is add some thicker strokes on your letters, okay? So you're just going to take your regular script lettering, meaning that your letters are connected together, and add some thickness on your strokes. And that will make it look more like calligraphy. So if you're wondering where you need to add these thick strokes, well, the answer is anywhere that you have a downstroke. So if you kind of trace back over the path that your letters follow, as we come around here, this part of the C comes down. Then it goes back up here. So anywhere that your pen comes down towards you, that's where you're going to add the thick stroke. So the easiest way to do it, if you're first starting out, is to just write your whole word out with your pen, and then go back over it and sort of hover over it, and anywhere that you come down towards yourself, you just thicken it up. So the goal is to get a consistent width of your strokes. So you don't want any of your strokes to be way thinner or way thicker than your other strokes. The goal is to get them to be as consistent as possible. So what we're doing here is called faux calligraphy. We actually have a whole other video and video series and free course on how to do faux calligraphy, so definitely check that out for more details, but this will get you started really quick. Faux calligraphy is technically considered hand lettering. So hand lettering is when you're creating letters by hand and you're drawing them. So see how I'm drawing like the outlines of the letters? That's what hand lettering is. And so this is faux calligraphy, faux meaning fake. So it looks like calligraphy, but we didn't actually do real calligraphy with real calligraphy tools. We were just using a regular pen. Okay, so again, everywhere that your strokes come in a downward direction, that's where you're going to add your thick stroke. To take it a step further, you could use a tool like a Crayola marker. So Crayola marker is great because not only can you get thin lines when you draw with it, but you can also get thick lines. So one thing you could do, let's do the letter, let's do an A. You could do the same technique that we did before, write your letters and then go back in and find where your downstrokes were and thicken it up. But here you can just press harder on the pen to get a thicker stroke instead of having to do what we did with the other pen, which was if you have a line, having to draw a parallel line next to it and color it in. So with a Crayola, you can just have your line and then press harder to go over it. So that's an easy way to get started, is to write your letters. If you know cursive, you can try doing cursive. Calligraphy is actually not the same as cursive. We have other videos that go into more detail on that. But write your letters that are connected together with script, find your downstrokes, and then shade back over those pieces, pressing harder as you go on your downstrokes. You might have to sort of touch it up there. Okay, so that's another way that you can do faux calligraphy, but with a different tool. And then to get even a little more advanced, you can try doing your thick and thin strokes as you go. So rather than doing it all thin first and going back in to fill in the downstrokes, you can try pressing hard on your downstrokes, pressing light on your upstrokes, and then transitioning as you go so that you don't even have to go back and fill those in. You're just adding the pressure difference while you create your letters. And then to really step it up another level, you could try out a brush pen. So this is a Pentel brush pen, and as I write with it, it's similar to the way that I was using that Crayola marker before, where I'm pressing lighter on my upstrokes and harder on my downstrokes to get that difference in stroke contrast. So I'm getting thick strokes on my downstrokes and thin strokes on my upstrokes. So a lot of people use brush pens like this for modern calligraphy. And I'm using it just like I said, I'm pressing harder on the downstrokes and lighter on the upstrokes. So these come in all sorts of colors and then also sizes, so you can get much larger brush pens. I'll show you an example of that next. And for a larger brush pen, you would need to increase the size of your letters because the tip of the brush pen is a lot larger. And I'm doing the exact same thing here. I'm just pressing harder and lighter, harder and lighter. Now, of course, these are tools that you probably don't already have on hand if you're a beginner, but they're great ones to try out if you would like. So this is Pentel Touch brush pen, and this is a Tombow dual brush pen. This one's great because it also has another tip on the other end that you can do to do like this. You can use it to make accent letters. So let's finish off by looking at the alphabet. So I just wrote it at first with my monoline letters. I connected the letters together, and now we're going to go back in and add some shading. So I just wanted you to be able to see every single letter as it looks in the alphabet. So quiz yourself, where do we add the shades? What part of the letters? So the shades go on the down strokes. Anywhere that your pen comes down towards you, that's where we add the shade. So I'm just going to go over each of these letters. Now for me, I've been doing this for a while, so I don't really need to think about where the downstrokes are. But if you're newer, then it can be very helpful to write out your word first and then hover over it and figure out, okay, this part comes down. So that's where I'm going to add my shade. So hovering over it helps because you don't actually put your pen on the paper and ruin what you've already written while you're trying to figure out where to add your shades. And again, the goal is to get these shades to be consistent with each other, so they should be about the same thickness. And we do have a whole separate playlist that teaches you each of these letters if you want to see them in more detail. But just a tip, so for letters like, let's say for the J that I'm about to do, I'm going to do it a little bit bigger down here. So we know that we need to add the shade on the downstroke. So this part comes up, then this part comes down, turns around here and goes back up, and finishes going up. Okay, so to actually add the shading, what I'm going to do is, I know it needs to be on this whole piece right here. So first I'm going to draw a thin line to the right to mark where the top of that stroke is, and then I'll just follow the stroke down and taper from a thick line to a thin line as I reach the bottom, because by the time it gets here, I need to make it a thin stroke and turn around and go back up. Okay, so we're going to transition from thick to thin by tapering. Okay, and then looking at the oval, first I'll show you what not to do. So we don't want to overshade. So here would be an example of overshading where the shade, yes, it's on the downstroke of the oval, so this part goes up, this part goes down, but it's going to be way too chunky and thick because we're overshading. So you want to start and stop your shades right at the extreme points of the oval, so where it touches this top line and where it touches the bottom line. You shouldn't shade any further beyond that point. So it would look more like this. Okay, so again, we're tapering from our thin stroke to our thick stroke. So let's go back to the alphabet here. So there's lots of things to keep in mind when you're doing this faux calligraphy, but I encourage you to just try it with whatever tools you have on hand, whatever paper, whatever pen you have, just try it. Just write your name. We'll do the word hello together after we finish the alphabet, but just give it a try. And just remember to keep your thick shades, your thick strokes on the down strokes, and just leave your thin strokes alone. Don't even Don't even touch your upstrokes again after you write them. Just leave them thin. Okay, and then also when you're writing your letters, there are a handful of exceptions, but in most cases, you need to lift your pen between every single letter. So your letters shouldn't go into the next one. And let's show that as an example using the word hello. So if you were to write hello in script letters in cursive, it might look something like this. Okay, so I didn't take my pen off the paper at all. So in calligraphy, like I've been saying, we really lift your pen a lot. So instead of taking this A right, or this H right into the E, I'm going to lift my pen there and then start the E separately. Same with the L. Instead of going straight into it, you can see this piece of it starts at a different angle. So that's why when you do cursive, the letters end up looking a lot taller and narrower, and the loops look more vertical and narrow compared to calligraphy. So just by lifting your pen between each letter, it's going to automatically start looking more like calligraphy. Okay, so then after you write the word hello, you can go back in and add your downstrokes. You also want to make sure that the pen you're using is a decent size. If you use like a really, really thin pen and try to make big letters, this pen is pretty thin. But if you try to make really big letters and then you do your downstrokes, then it might take a really long time to color in this shading, which can be kind of frustrating. So I'd recommend using a pen that's not quite as thin as this one, or just if you are going to use something really small, then scale your letters down to make it even smaller so that when you add the shade, it's not like coloring in, like if you were to color in a huge area with a tiny pen, it would take you a lot longer than using a little bit of a thicker pen. So just adjust accordingly is what I'm trying to say. All right, so that is an introduction to easy calligraphy. I highly recommend that you try it with your name. Just get out a pen and paper right now, write your name, let me know how it goes. Make sure you check out our video on the basic strokes as well as our playlist about faux calligraphy if you want to go even further with learning all of the letters of the alphabet. And thank you so much for watching.